And we're back. Okay, so last we saw we are in fact a genius and it worked. And now for the exciting part, which is these guys, we only need the guys where something interesting has happened. We don't actually need the points that are just dry and stayed dry and nothing's happened yet. In other words, all these blue points. So we can actually delete the points that are fully blue, or more importantly, the points where the wetness is actually 0. So let's go ahead and put down a delete SOP. And we'll hook it up, and what we'll do is we're going to say delete points by expression where $wetness is equal to 0. We know we have wetness as a variable because we set it up that way. So now if we go here, gets rid of all those guys, which is actually pretty cool when you think about it. So we play it now from the beginning. Note that it's actually making the points as they happen. So instead of having whatever it was, 700,000 points, has like 100,000 points. So it has far less. Now there's still an interesting thing that's about to happen. And I want to show you, I'm just going to touch on this quickly, but we'll talk about it at the end. If you look down here, as a matter of fact, I'll help you look, you'll notice something interesting. That is because our fluid, like let's turn off the grid, just look at the points, and this is actually kind of cool. Our fluid moves, and you notice it still has some, it looks good in practice, but the parts that it leaves behind, specifically this guy, each frame, boom, 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 he moves a lot. So all we have to do to get rid of that is actually change the sub-steps. I'm just going to change the name of this because this extra space is bugging me. Our SOP solver, our solver SOP, has a sub-steps right here, and we could upgrade that. However, the things to remember is that it's going to need these guys from both its sides to be something it can interpolate in between. So we put this to 3, we would get smoother steps, and I'll actually show you that in a little bit. But the thing about that is that we would need, it needs to be able to interpolate stuff. So this, no problem interpolating. This over here, however, remember our fluid is coming from this guy. It can interpolate these guys pretty easily because they each have velocities and everything's set so it can interpolate it. I'm not so sure it can with this. So I think if we actually want to do substeps, we'd probably have to put this into our space and actually put a time blend above that. In other words, when you add substeps, usually what you do is you put it in this guy. You don't have to actually do anything to it. You just put them in like that. And the only thing he magically does is if there's a point attribute called ID, it'll know that when it's, halfway or a third of the way through the frame, that it'll look at the guys based on ID and move them just a third of the way. And that'll give you smooth movement for it. The thing is, it doesn't necessarily do that with this because this is changing every frame. So I'm not going to do that right now. I will show you the result of that in a second. But first I want to move on with what we need to do next, which is simply this. We delete our points. We've got our, I have to let it cook. We've got our points and we're deleting these guys. So now what we need to do is we need to put a file cache down. Let's actually bake these guys out. Because, and I'm going to call these guys grid, because we're going to underscore everything with, or prefix everything with grid in this place. Wet points. These are actually the magic sauce of this whole thing. This is basically what we're going to output. Remember, get rid of this hip name thing when they do this. I don't know why Houdini does this. So basically we can have it as something else. What's going to happen here is I'm going to go ahead and bake this out, and I'll jump to the next lesson, so we'll sit through this. So what it's going to do once we have this, these are the points we're actually used in the shader, and the shader is going to actually look for how close is it to one of these quote-unquote wet points, and whether it wants a shaded as wet or dry. Okay, so I'm going to do the next one, and as promised, I'll show you the smooth and non-smooth version of the drippy stuff as well. So come back for mission 6.